that's educated because of the urgent need. He previously served as VP of IASE, which is the education subgroup of ISI, and has just stepped down from the Council of ISI, though he still serves on the ISI Capacity Building Committee and the boards of the Literacy Project and STAC, which we'll be learning about today. After spending time at IDEMS in Ghana and the University of Reading in the UK, he co-founded IDEMS International 8 years ago, which contributes substantially to impactful social change in low resource environments. Right, then we have Dr. Michael Obiero Oyengo. He's a Kenyan mathematician and a lecturer in the Department of Pure and Applied Maths at Maseno University, Kenya. And he holds a PhD in pure maths from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in the US. Dr. Oyengo is a leader in maths education in Africa, maths education innovation in Africa. He chairs the African leadership team of STAC and is a member of the International STAC Advisory Board. He chairs the Kenyan Mathematical Society is one of the director of IDEMS, so a community interest company that's partnered with IDEMS that supports education and research initiatives across Africa. David and Mike, you are welcome to the South African Education Seminar, and we are really looking forward to hearing from you about STAC. Over to you.
Thanks. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to be talking on a topic which I've become very passionate about. I should clarify that you might, if you're observant, notice what I have created versus what other people have created. And I should mention particularly Lily Clements and James Musyoka, who were at the World Statistics Congress recently, and I have shamelessly stolen their slides. So I will be presenting on these broad areas, and I'll be starting a little bit with my personal journey. As has been mentioned, I was a pure mathematician. I was an algebraic geometer. When I moved to Kenya as a local lecturer, I taught algebraic geometry and homological algebra to the master's program, of which Mike was my student, and so he was embedded in very theoretical mathematics. But quite quickly, I got sucked into the statistics, the applied statistics master's program, and recognized that the current program wasn't teaching the practical skills that the students needed, and so got very immersed in sort of trying different innovations, using statistical games, using technology in different ways to teach statistics, and actually ended up that becoming what I'm sort of most well known for. What the two things I want to draw out in this for statistics specifically, although in many ways I think this does apply to mathematics for the broader audience, well, particularly the second point, but is that the right software does matter. And I'll come back to this. In fact, the first bit I'll do will not be on STAC, but will be on what was developed originally in Kenya to fill the gap of statistics software that was needed, we felt, to be able to offer a better education. And the second point, which is really critical here, is assessment. And really the idea of formative assessment for learning. This is really critical. It's something where, if we think of the challenges that are faced in many African institutions across the continent, and I must admit it is slightly less so in some South African universities, but I know South African universities which have some of these common problems as well, where just the resources are not enough. There are common cases. Mike, when he went back to Kenya to teach, was immediately given a relatively small class of only 450 students. I mean, the bigger classes later were over 1,000. He has no TAs, and he had to give a good education. He found it was impossible, and that's why thinking about how to get good formative assessment in environments where student learning is often held back because of that lack of human interaction is something which is a really important problem. But what's really interesting is this is not a problem just for low resource environments. We as an organization, as a group now, are sort of contracted by Caltech University at the moment, who have a total student population across undergraduates, across all their years, less than one of Mike's classes. And yet they want to use the same tools for formative assessment, because this is enhancing the experience of their students, because these are low stakes assessments. Formative assessment can be really useful in all contexts. Okay. I'm going to go through this very quickly, but one of the presentations from the recent World Statistics Congress that Lily gave was about our Instat. This is an initiative which is coming out of Africa. This logo, which one of my colleagues, James Mashoka, was sort of behind, is really this idea that we need to be thinking of Africa as a source of innovation for the world, because there's a lot of the context which is creating or enabling innovation to happen in ways which are interestingly scalable. I'm going to just say the problem that our Instat was trying to solve is if you use SPSS or you use Stata or SAS or a big front end software with a nice front end, then there are things where you don't need to focus on the code and you can focus on learning about the stats. Whereas R is wonderful as long as you can already code. But if you can't already code, you get distracted by the scripting, the coding, instead of worrying about the statistics and the data. And so the idea of having a good front end to R, which enables people to use R without getting distracted by the coding, was a big part of what we felt was needed pedagogically in terms of the education we were seeing. And despite there being many front ends that already existed, none of them were serving the purpose that we needed, which was to really enhance good statistical practice. And this is tomorrow from when we gave the talk in The Hague, but so it is now just over 10 years old, and it now has over 10,000 PRs issues which associated to it. There's three things which we feel are very different. One of them is for the stats lecturers in the room. As somebody who works with data and supports researchers in many different areas, I have never been asked to analyze a serious study which doesn't have multi-level data, which doesn't have data at multiple levels. We should be teaching with multi-level data sets from the very beginning. I believe this should go down to high school and maybe even below. Multi-level data should not be an advanced topic. Lily talks about the fact that she went through her undergraduate, her master's, her PhD without ever being taught about multi-level data. And this to me is a real mistake. Multi-level data is all data that is worth analyzing pretty much. And so this needs to become central to our teaching. And our Instat is designed to be able to make multi-level data easier to analyze and more central to what we do. I won't go into the details of this, but this is essentially a database software, and it uses this as a database. The menu design of prepare, describe, model, this is actually built from, I guess it's what used to be known as RStudio, POSIT. They have, in the Tidyverse, discussed these ideas of how you actually should be thinking about the process of what you're doing, how you import your data, how you tidy your data, how you then try and build understanding by going through these cycles of transforming, visualizing, modeling, until you actually gain understanding from your data, and then how you communicate it. This is what we recognize. There are ways in which we need to move towards enabling this much more and building this into our teaching in a way which sets students up for success in working with data themselves. And the final thing I'm going to just call out, which is important if you work in specific disciplines, is that we've recognized that there is a big cognitive load which is totally unnecessary to use a generalized statistics package when you have data of a particular type. If you have climatic data, then what are standard analyses of climatic data are not standard analyses for a stats package. You know, if you have rainfall data and you want to know the start of the rain, that's a standard thing to do. But it's not a standard analysis in a general stats package. It's a standard analysis in a specialist package, which understands the nature of your data. And so actually building menus, building sort of versions or variants of the software, which serve the purpose of enabling analysis to happen more easily when you've got a particular type of data, is something we recognize is really essential. And it's what we should be enabling and thinking as we go forward. And so that's another important component that our INSTAT has done. And she drew out both the climatic menu and the tricots menu and went through and actually stated that the key point here is that for us to be able to use the climatic menu well, we need to put the metadata in, which means that the software understands the nature of the data and can therefore help you with your analysis by saying, okay, well, you don't need to carry that cognitive load. You've told us what the data is, it fits into formats we understand, and we can therefore pre-populate dialogues and help you to just do the analyses you need to do more easily. I'm not going to dig into the future plans of our INSTAT, but I am going to say that this is a software product which has come out of, it's been substantially developed in Kenya, and it's something where it is getting to the stage where we believe with the right contributors, good communities could emerge, and this could transform education, not just in Africa, but worldwide. Okay, that should not have been there. That slide was supposed to be taken away. I'm going to hand over to Mike now and get Mike to introduce the African Stat community. This is really the tool that we're wanting to introduce today. There are two more talks which Lily gave related to Stat, which I will rush through afterwards. But Mike, over to you.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you, Michael, for the invitation. It's a real honor. I'm not a statistician. I'm a mathematician and an enthusiast of math education. To give us a brief background about myself, David was my master's advisor at Maseno. Then I went to the US for 6 years for my PhD, came back to Maseno in 2018. And my coming back was informed partly by the challenges I encountered in the US. I went to the US as a top student from Kenya, but my first year was a bit rough because it became very apparent that I didn't have the necessary foundation to get into rigorous mathematics research. And so my coming back was informed by the desire to give students a better education to better equip them for that kind of environment. So when I came back in 2018, and as David mentioned, I was given a class to teach. The first class was about 500, which is sort of an average class in terms of size in Kenya. And the next semester, my class was, I think it was 900 in the end. And this is an environment where I don't have any teaching assistants. It's just myself and my students. So there was no way I could give them a better education without technological intervention. And this is where David comes in. Again, I reached out to him, mentioned the difficulties I was having, and he introduced me to Chris, who gave me a 2-day crash course in Stack. That was in Edinburgh, sometimes and late 2018. So we started using Stack in 2019, 2 courses. And after that, with the positive impact we had, the first course was linear algebra and calculus. Then later on in the year, we had vector calculus and basic mathematics. And after the initial experience, we wanted to share our experiences with the other African colleagues. So we had a series of workshops in Maseno. The first one in 2019, in 20, I think COVID came. And then after COVID, we had another workshop. Then had the first Stack conference in 2023. And this was the first conference of its kind. A different format. We brought in some of the people from the international community. And through the conversations we had as part of the conference, I think it was important to have a community that sort of provides support to people who want to use Stack. So the community was set up in 2023. Different countries were involved. We had Rwanda, Ghana, Kenya was there, Tanzania was there. And the community has grown. This year, we had a conference in Ethiopia where we had interest from Botswana, and we are going to support them. We have Namibia, we have Somalia, South Sudan. So the community is growing. And the main idea or the main objective of the community is just to offer support to each other in terms of adopting and adapting Stack in our teaching, and linking colleagues to the international community. Next slide, David. So some of the achievements we've had so far is that there are 7 universities which are actively using Stack in Kenya. One university, which is Masinde Muliro, where we had the first conference, has fully institutionalized Stack, such that all the courses in the maths department are being taught with Stack assessment tools. And it's the first country of its kind in Africa, I think, to do that. So it's leading the way in terms of how to institutionalize Stack. We've supported other universities such as Ethiopia, Tanzania, Namibia, and we have a team that is supporting developing resources for Italy. We've organized workshops. As I mentioned, we've had several workshops in Maseno. We've had conferences. Recently, we had a workshop at a technical and vocational institution that wants to use Stack. One of the things we are also participating in is informing areas of development of Stack to address our needs. So that if we need a given aspect of Stack to serve us, we inform the Stack developers of the same. And I'm glad that some of the recent key developments have come out of the Africa Stack community. We also have an open question bank of Stack resources, and I'll give an overview of some of the courses that have these resources. So anyone can access these resources. They are being housed at IDEMS, an organization that has supported us for a while. We are also getting into developing textbooks using pretexts and with Stack assessment. So recently we are developing basic math textbooks for Ethiopia to serve their needs, because they're having like 6,000 students per university who needs to do that particular course. And in Kenya, we are developing textbooks for secondary schools with Stack resources. So next page, David. Yeah, so some of the courses that have been developed using Stack, we have basic mathematics, complex numbers. So that's up to complex integration and its applications. We have integral, differential integral calculus, linear algebra, statistics and probability. Again, this is one of the foundational courses taught in almost all Kenyan universities, and the classes are up to 1,500. And the way we are assigned teaching duties, you don't have teaching assistants to support you. Then we have other advanced math courses like measure theory, foundations pure mathematics. I think we are also thinking of developing real analysis, and these are proof-heavy courses, which is a new area of development. And I'm glad that we'll also inform the development of STAC towards addressing those needs from our end. Then we have applied mathematics, which includes lots of modeling that also has been developed with resources. Next slide. Some of the partner organizations, IDEMS. I remember when I go to Maseno, even installing the STAC plugin needed some money to be paid that Maseno was not willing to part with. So I wrote to IDEMS, and they offered to pay the $500 required to upgrade the servers and install the STAC plugin. And IDEMS has been key in helping us organize and conduct workshops and conferences, and even giving us financial support to attend some of these events. Then we have IDEMS. So most of the team supporting in authoring STAC questions and also supporting lecturers in managing their online courses is housed at IDEMS. IDEMS is a partner organization to IDEMS, but it's in Kenya. And early this year, I became one of the directors. So it's this team which is supporting other African lecturers develop and implement STAC resources, and even to handle the online management system. Then obviously the University of Edinburgh got us started. The first pilot case of STAC was done on the University of Edinburgh servers, and through Chris, who is a professor at the university, we've always got support whenever we need it. So I think the next slide. So South Africa and the statistics community can be part of the STAC community. And I'm glad that we have mathematicians in the audience. So some of the resources developed can be accessed right away. You can adapt them as they are, or you can adopt them to your needs. You can also contribute to the open question banks by allowing us to have the questions you author as part of the open question bank repository. Then you can get support from the wider African STAC community, as well as the international STAC community, and we are sort of the link between the needs in the Africa context and the international STAC community. You can contribute to the open question banks. We are having a STAC conference in Kenya next year from the 27th to 31st of July. So if you try to pilot the use of STAC, we'll appreciate you sharing your experiences with us at the next STAC conference. So it's a very small community, basically math education enthusiasts. We rely mostly on the STAC professionals, for instance, to do most of the tasks we don't have expertise in. The international STAC community in terms of linking us to other people using STAC so that we can share or we can benefit from what they've done before, and also in terms of sharing what we've done and just getting feedback. So thank you so much, and I look forward to engaging you as part of the community. Thank you. David, you're muted.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks for pointing out I'm muted. I wanted to draw out two things from Mike's presentation, which I think are really important. One is the way the African community has been using STAC is different in nature to the way it has been used internationally. It's used internationally in over 2,000 institutions. It's sort of every university in Finland uses it, apparently. It's used in Japan, in Germany, in the UK. It's used all over except the US, and that we're trying to change that. Caltech is one of the first institutions to really try and use it. But it is something which is actually very widely used. But the African community, I believe, is using it differently. When STAC was developed first, it was developed with the idea that a lecturer would develop the STAC questions for their own course, and it's a tool which enables them to take ownership of their course. Well, when you're teaching 1,000 students and that's not your only course in the semester, the workload, is such that this isn't realistic. And so the model which the African STAC community has been to have, STAC specialists who author the questions on behalf of the lecturers and who then support the lecturers to integrate this into their own training. I'll just mention the Musindu Muliro case where this was institutionalized. Lowy, the person behind that, was brilliant. The way he did it is he went to his colleagues and said, don't worry. What we'll do is we'll do the continuous assessment for you so you've got less work. Just teach as normal, but don't worry about the continuous assessment. And then what happened was amazing, because there were courses like complex analysis where the students had been failing terribly for years. The course was taught by the same lecturer in the same way, but the only thing that changed was the continuous assessment. And suddenly they had a beautiful normal distribution of students. And the lecturer was just dumbfounded. She just couldn't understand how the students had now learned how to do the things that she had been failing to teach them before. And so she was a total convert. And so that was a really exciting moment in the first African STAC conference to get these results. And it was extremely motivating to see that this was an intervention which, done right, increases student achievement without increasing lecturer time commitment, without it being more work for the lecturers. And this is why taking that approach of actually working collaboratively on this in ways where the community is benefiting and building these open question banks to help one another so that it's not all on the lecturers to do all the work, is part of what the success of the African STAC community has been. And that is possible to then be to build from. You can take the questions that exist, you can improve them, you can feed them back, but more than that, you can ask the colleagues in Kenya for support to improve them so that you can start by using them. So my suggestion is the success is to use first and develop after, and then you become a contributor. But start by using something and asking for help to get something which is usable for you. The second thing I wanted to draw out was the conference. This is a big deal. This is the first time that the official STAC conference has left Europe. This isn't just the first time it's coming to Africa. It has not left Europe before. This is a really big deal, and it is happening because of the African STAC community and what they have demonstrated to the wider STAC community. There is a growing amount of interest in the way that actually people are coming to learn from the approach taken in Kenya and the community which is growing beyond it, because it is serving in a way which others recognize could be better than what they're doing. In the UK, we talk with universities all the time. And in fact, I was discussing this just yesterday. The University of Durham doesn't know if they can share questions with other universities. They don't know if they can. It's ridiculous that, it's not that the lecturer doesn't want to, it's just that they don't know. So they can't do it because they don't know if they can. And all of this is built, of course, on open technology. So thinking about this in terms of these collaborations is so valuable and so important. Okay, back to statistics, because actually what Lily has done on the statistics side of this, and it isn't just Lily, it is James Musyoka, or James Kaleli Musyoka, who is a colleague of Mike's, is the person who really used Stack for data and became known in the Stack community for that. And Lily has built on that work, and Lily and James work very closely together. And what's interesting is that there is the question bank that was mentioned. There's a GitHub repo, there's a pretext course, there's a Moodle course, but let's not worry about that now. You can have the slides. It was mentioned the fact that this has been integrated with pretext so that you can now build these interactive online textbooks. But the most important thing is that this builds, the work that James did builds on actually a well-established, outdated project called CAST, which came out of New Zealand, Computer Assisted Statistics Textbooks. And a lot of the questions that have been redeveloped, not all of them, but some of them, have been redeveloped based on the learnings from CAST. Now, I could have given a whole talk just based on CAST. This CAST is what, over a decade ago, I had a master's student in Kenya use CAST for, it was the Kenyan Institute of Management, which is a sort of technical training, and it's a centralized system. And they found that using CAST, their students got more than a 10% boost on the centralized exam because of the learning they had using the mastery questions within CAST. And that they showed that this was independent of the teacher themselves. So they had two different teachers at that center. And, you know, when the second teacher adopted it, their students got the same boost. It was independent of so many different factors. It was just that improved learning. And these were some of the questions where I suddenly started realizing the importance of assessment in enabling us to improve not just statistics teaching, that's how I came into it, but mathematical assessment in general. And so formative assessment can really enable students to engage with the material in a different way. This particular example is a very simple one of, can you estimate the mean and the median? And, you know, if you get it wrong, then, you know, some of the things of it, it's pulling out and it's making you reflect on this. This data was skew. Aha, because it was skew, you should have known that relative to the mean, you know, where should the median be relative to the mean? These are things that you should be able to know, and therefore to have an understanding of those statistical concepts. And so really this idea of thinking about how do we teach using this assessment, a lot of that has been split up now. We start to think about this of how do you build the conceptual understanding? What's the applied comprehension? And do you have the technical skills to do it yourself? I don't have time to go through this in great detail, but there's a whole range of questions there, you know, from just understanding, you know, do you understand the nature of an ANOVA table? You know, and getting feedback on that. This is a really interesting one about estimating standard deviation. I do this, I think, I love doing this to masters and PhD students. It's one of the first questions I give them, and they all get it wrong, that they've been taught standard deviation since they were in school, but they don't know how to do this. You know, this is something where understanding the concept requires a different type of understanding. And then, of course, the type of question which I love, and I'll dig into this question a bit more in a minute, is the type of question where you actually get data out. This, you know, because these systems are randomized, you can have randomized systems. Everyone can get their own data set, but it can be done in such a way that you actually then, if you analyze your data set, then the responses here can draw out, and we'll see this in a minute, misconceptions, misunderstandings, or, you know, you can fall into the way Lily says I'm mean and I put traps in. It's not traps, but it is trying to draw out the misconceptions or the potential mistakes that people can make. This is what you can actually put in to help make sure that people are actually gaining the skills. I'm going to jump straight into that example, which is, this is a question which Lily has created very recently, and I love it because it's actually very simple. You can do this with any software. You can just use a spreadsheet software. You don't even need to use a stats package. Yeah, you get given your data, and when you analyze your data, here's your data. Was maize grown? Was sorghum grown? Was millet grown? Was maize sold? Was sorghum sold? Was millet sold? And then what was the profit? Yeah, very simple, very interesting data. And if I ignore all missing values and I catch the average product, then sorghum's the winner. And so you put in that sorghum is has the highest average profit, and you find that you get feedback that it appears that all of the missing values have been ignored. You haven't thought about the missing values. What do the missing values mean? Well, a missing value, if you've grown sorghum, if you've not grown sorghum, is different from a missing value that if you did grow sorghum. Yeah, and this is really important. So maybe you should say that, if you grew sorghum and you didn't get a profit, well, then maybe that's 0. And so maybe you should replace all the missing values with a 0. Yeah. And if you do that, you now find that sorghum is much lower and that millet is really bad, but maize is your best, so maize is your best, but no, you're still wrong. Because it's something which, if you look at the missing values correctly, some of the missing values we simply may not know, whereas other missing values, if you, so let me be clear on this. If your millet wasn't grown, then it's not 0 because it wasn't grown. Yeah. If your millet was grown and you didn't sell it, then why didn't you sell it? So these are actually getting into sort of more complicated sort of interpretations of what does it mean to be missing based on the information you have. And if you replace the profit with 0, if it is grown and not sold, but ignore them otherwise, we get an interesting answer. And then we find that actually millet is your most profitable. Now, the data is randomized, but you can get the results so that the system knows that based on this data, these are the results, and it's baked in that you will get missing values, which will give you these different results. And so that is something where you can now help to guide people through an analysis, which gets them to challenge their understanding. What do they know about the data? I'm going to stop here. But basically, the key is we can build really imaginative questions in this generalized system. This is a system where, that can be used for many different contexts. It can be used for mathematical assessment in general. We can build these very interesting questions. Now, of course, you can build these questions in something like R. R has the ability to actually build questions. The challenge is the feedback. The mechanisms to be able to do these advanced feedback systems. There's a whole infrastructure that's been built around that, which doesn't exist in many other systems. And so one of the powers, what I'd love if we did get Stack used for statistics much more, then it would be absolutely possible to imagine us having access to R or Python in the back end. And so that's not impossible to imagine. But the power of the system is that it's not just about the ability to do those calculations. It's also about the ability to give good feedback and understand how good feedback is given. I'm going to skip over because I've only got a couple of minutes left. My last slide. As you might have noticed, the slides that I've created are rather less inviting than the slides that others have created. But that's okay. I recognize my skills and my limitations. I want to finish by saying that actually, everybody's talking about what AI is doing for our education. You know, do we need to code anymore if you can just ask ChatGPT to write the code for you? Do we need to teach coding? What should we do? How should we actually teach about data and statistics? I believe that these changes are real, they're happening. There's also a change in how important modeling is. But what I believe is going to remain is that if we think about statistical analysis, about being able to explore, describe, and present data, so where the exploring is essentially what you do before you have your study objectives, where you just look at your data, you maybe find out ways to clean your data, you maybe have to put it into a rectangular shape because it's come in a funny shape. Your describe, that would include your modeling. This is you have an objective and you now do the analysis, be they descriptive or modeling, to be able to get the results and understand the results. That's what I would include in the describe phase, and then present for a specific audience. This is about now saying, well, you have results, but how do you communicate those results? This is a lot about different types of data visualization, but it's also about understanding how, you know, journalists do a lot of work on understanding how do particular audiences receive information in different ways. If we think about this explore, describe, present, and we teach the skills with respect to that, then these become the AI tools which are now coming out, which are potentially changing everything, do not change this, because we still need to do these three functions when we get data. That's where I have that. My time is up, and I'm happy. I will put the slides in the chat and open this up for questions.
Thanks very much, David, and thank you, Mike. I'm going to jump in before I open the floor to questions, because there are two critical things that I need to ask first. Are there places where we can go to do questions in maths or in statistics using Stack that we can see how the system works?
So very quickly, in the talk, there are lots of links. Some of these links include, for example, the Ethiopian textbook, which you don't need to log in, you don't need to do anything, you can do that and you can see. So this is a basic math textbook, and this is one of the reasons that it was so important, the work that, and this is, Georg, who is a member of our team, did that work because Mike said, we need this. We need to have, we can't just have this within learning management systems, within Moodle or whatever your learning management system is. We need to be able to get this out to people. We need to remove those barriers. There is also in Lily's talk, there is a link to, I think, a pretext textbook which has 12 statistics questions as demonstration questions.
Okay.
So I think those would be, there are examples of things within the talk. There are links for 2 of those.
Okay, then in the talks as well, are there links to how we would start using Stack? Do we have to get our learning management system on board, or can we use it in a smaller way somehow before that?
So
the Stack 101 course?
Stack 101.
There is a Stack 101 course. We can share the link to that, but that's about actually using. So what I would say is that, and this is where the systems we set up with the African Stack community, quite a number of universities who haven't been able to get their learning management system set up have actually ended up using our eCampus. We have an eCampus which is available. Anyone who wants to set up a course, we can create a course on that. And, you know, we prefer not to use it for students, but we do have universities like the University of Dar es Salaam, who for various reasons, they stopped using their own Moodle for this. And they now we anonymize their students and they use our service. So it is possible. We would advise you to use your own learning management systems. It's better for everyone. But if you can't, we can support that and you can use our service. It's just that we would prefer if then the students were anonymized, so we're not holding any personal data.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And that it's never as good as the students are anonymized, because you actually want to communicate with them through the learning management system and so on. So it isn't an ideal solution. We can, of course, offer this as a paid service, but as a free service, we can allow people to use our servers, and if people need service providers for Moodle, that is actually something we are set up to do. But what we find is most universities have a learning management system. So the real question is how to integrate into that. And that's something which, again, we can help. We've got supporting that. That would be the ideal solution, really, is to use your own learning management systems.
So I presume the course that you have available, or that Stack 101 course, will inform us on how to do that. How to get the Stack plugged into the LMS.
No, so there is documentation on that. That it's an open source plugin to Moodle. This is well documented. The only tricky piece of that, which we have found some universities struggle with, is linking in the Maxima server. And we actually do offer that as a service to a number of universities, where if they struggle to do the installation of Maxima on their servers or whatever, we can offer that as a service, so that is simplified. So there is documentation, all that. This is sort of something which is well documented in the Stack community. I would suggest you start by actually seeing what it is and using things that exist, and we can then help if you need to talk to the institutions. Get in touch with us. Mike, Santiago is a good person to support with that often, or I guess he's the right person. Yeah.
Yeah,
so we can,
and Gil to an extent.
Yeah. We can put you in touch with people who can really help there.
Yeah, I wanted to throw some links in the chat, but it's not available. So that's.
I was trying to do the same.
Why is chat not available? Let me have a look. Oh, possibly because you're unverified. Hang on a second. I am not exactly sure how to do this. Do I have chat? Seems like I have chat. Okay. Let me see if I can switch that on, and then in the meantime, let me open up the questions to the floor. Ramatsimela.
Thank you, Michael. A question is that is the Stack a software? Do we need to install it to use it?
So if you want to embed it in your learning management system and to be able to use it for formalized assessment, then yes, it is a plugin to Moodle, or it can be integrated through the with other learning management systems. Some more easily than others. If you want to use it, one of the things that Mike has sort of instigated is that it now also embeds into pretext, which means that it can be distributed through these textbooks. And so it is possible to just get students to be able to interact with Stack questions outside of a learning management system. And so that is possible. It's a bit more work at the moment. This is very new. This has literally only been available for the last 6 months. But it is now possible to have it available through that. So yeah, and I should be clear, Stack is the underlying system to be able to develop this assessment. And then what you have is people then author the questions and the assessment itself in Stack. So they then produce the actual products for these assessments. And that's where these open question banks come in, which you can then use existing questions. And actually Stack itself, once you install the plugin, comes with an embedded open question bank as well.
All right, so it's basically used for maths and stats only.
No, it's used. I mean, it's used actually across STEM. And there's actually a big effort on chemistry recently. It's been used in engineering substantially, and there's actually these Helm is helping engineers learn mathematics. There's a whole set of quizzes that have been created in that which are openly available. So there's all sorts of different connections, but really what it is as a system is what makes it powerful is it has the ability to automate feedback when you have some formal mathematical expression or data in some sense.
Like, it's working like it can solve, like help solve, let's say math problems, make the more like when you search and you want to solve a problem or to find the quickest approach how to solve the problem, maybe to show students how to solve this problem in a more simpler way, first quickest way. How does it work?
Well, so the way Stack works is you author the question. This is a deterministic system. Actually, we are in the process of working with the developers of Stack to integrate AI so that it could play other roles as well. But Stack as a component at the moment is a deterministic system which has a computer algebra system called Maxima embedded behind it. So if you want to, as a lecturer, if you want to assess, let's say, differentiation or integration, then it actually knows how to differentiate a formula. So it actually can understand the expression and differentiate it for you. And so you can actually, in the teacher answer and the student answer, you can check to see whether the student answer has made a particular type of mistake. You know, did they differentiate instead of integrating? You know, you could then catch that and you could give specific feedback to say that, you know, the way you've approached this means that you've differentiated.
Finally.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
All right, sorry, I don't know why I can't get the chat going, but Sean, can you ask your question?
Hi, yes, I hope I'm audible.
Okay.
2 questions. Sorry?
Yep.
Okay. 2 questions. The one is, how open is the open question bank? Is it accessible to students? And the other one is, how easy is it to develop a question in the Stack system? Because I know it's variable, like perspective is different, because, for example, I find it trivial to set up a question with our exams, and yet I haven't been able to convince any of my colleagues to even try it in 5 years. So I'm curious about those 2 points.
So, really, really good questions. So the first question is, in theory, the open question banks could be available to students, but that doesn't help them when they get a specific question, because almost all the questions that we develop are randomized. So they could get any one of thousands of random variants. So the specific answer they need, if they can figure out from the actual question that's authored what the answer should be, then they've understood that, you know, it's very unlikely that they haven't learnt more than actually answering the question. So the fact that the students could, if they wanted to really get the open questions, get them, doesn't help them in answering it, which is part of where these random variants are so important. But the second question, and it does relate to this, authoring a simple question without random variants for certain problems is trivial. It's really easy, but it's not very useful. The useful questions are quite hard to author. And this is where, you know, beyond what you'll already have authored in these R exam systems, you know, that would just be the first step in authoring what you would be doing within Stack, because then the whole feedback system is a lot more detailed, a lot more complicated. So this is where it is designed to be easy for lecturers to author, but our reality is it takes a certain type of person to want to and to actually author these questions. And Mike learned it in a couple of days and then he was off and flying. There are other people who have done the same. We've got a lecturer in Tanzania who is just an amazing Stack question author who does this on his own. But most of the people we find who use it, they use questions that have been pre-authored. And this is what the team in Kenya can offer support on. These open question banks, if you needed something to be adapted or something to be developed, you could discuss with them if they could support that as a starting point. Because what we found is that the authoring is complex enough that good question authoring is challenging. So the failure, I would argue, of Stack in certain contexts is the expectation that every lecturer should author their own questions. I believe some lecturers should author their own questions, but every lecturer could use Stack questions. And I think that's an interesting and important distinction. Mike, do you want to just add anything on that? Because I'm conscious we're almost out of time.
Authoring is, it depends on someone's interest, time, and the type of question, like David mentioned. Some of the best questions need a lot of conceptualization and implementing those ideas, and that could take time to do properly. But a basic question could take you a couple of minutes. So what we found effective is having a bunch of questions which are already authored, sharing them, and because they're open, you can make improvements to the questions so that it fits what you need. And that's a much easier starting point. Also, another feature which was added to Stack was a library. So before we started authoring questions from scratch, but now you can go to the library, look for a question that closely matches what you want, and that can be a starting point. So I think it's much, much easier now than when we started, but it's still a lot of work.
Actually, let me just talk to this very simply, because the point you've just brought out there, Mike, is really important. Stack is changing substantially because of what they've observed in the African Stack community, and they recognize this need to make authoring and adaptation simpler, and to not just make it so that everyone has to start from scratch. So there is a lot of work. The latest releases has the first variant of being able to adapt this template of a question. And so I believe within the next couple of years, this will be much easier. This is something which is being actively worked on and developed. You know, credit to Mike and his team for pushing the developers to move in this direction. So that authoring piece is a really important one. It is one which is changing, but actually getting people using this in contexts where we can then influence the direction the software develops is really important. So if it isn't serving your needs now, communicate why it's not serving your needs. And that is something where Mike and myself are able to have influence there on pushing the direction of development. This is why we're on the board for that reason, to influence the direction of development.
All right. Just before everybody leaves, I know we've got a couple of minutes. We can go over if there are more questions, but I can't seem to get the chat working. So I think what the best thing to do would be to Mike and David, if you can email me the resources, then I will share them with Tom, who invited many of the external participants today, and then I can also distribute it to the other attendees. I think that would be best. So nobody's going to miss out on the information. We'll make sure that it filters down to everyone. Is that fine, David and Mike?
You should have the presentation in your inbox now.
Perfect. Okay. Are there any more pressing questions for Mike or for David? Okay, seems not. So it looks like we will be able to end just a few minutes after time. I'm sure that once everyone's got the resources, they will be contacting both of you. And that said, I would like to thank you for your time, Mike, and for your time, David. We are very appreciative of the hour that you took out of your schedules to teach us a little bit about Stack. And I'm sure that we will develop a South African node for the implementation of Stack, both in maths and in statistics. I know the CPUT, the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, is very interested in development in their maths, physics, and statistics department. So I'm sure at some point there will be some interaction from South African side, if not just through the CPUT. All right, thank you very much, guys.
Maybe
And
let me just repeat the one thing. Don't
Yeah.
suffer in silence if you're finding things difficult to install or whatever. Get in
absolutely.
touch. And I think you will have the warning from Michael, you know, I'm maybe not the best person to be in touch with. So I will very quickly hand you over to other people to be in touch with who will actually help you. So
That's
if they
perfect.
contact me, I can quickly guide them to the right people so that you don't get held up by David.
No, that's perfect. Thanks, Mike.
Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good
Thanks,
afternoon,
everyone.
everyone.
Good
Cheers.
afternoon. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.